Hello, thanks for joining us. My name's Ian Stroud.
And my name is David Malone, and this is Hyperland.
You know when you go on holiday,
Yeah, I've heard about it.
you come back and quite soon afterwards you've forgotten all about it. I'm feeling a bit like that, but I've got to apologise for our last podcast. You could hear my neighbour Jackie with her garden shears, hedge cutters in the background. And while I was on holiday, she said before, she's a lovely neighbour, her and Harry, and she keeps on asking, "Oh, Ian, can I come over and just trim my bush, hedge, tree, whatever it is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, knock yourself out." But before I went on holiday, I said to her, "Right, I'm away. Feel free, knock yourself out, do whatever you want." And I came back. She's pretty much landscaped my whole garden. I was delighted.
Don't complain about having neighbours like that,
I'm
mate.
not. I want to take them with me if I ever move. But the other thing I did on holiday was I've said before on my phone I've got a number of different news apps because I don't trust any one.
Yeah.
And I'd know you're deep in writing and research and things like that, and I always fear that something will break and David might miss it. I quickly better send this across to him. So on the 3rd of May, there was a report about H5N1.
Oh, bird flu. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's travelling not from birds but from cattle to human.
Hang on a sec.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right. There is a really interesting update to be on bird flu. And what has happened is bird flu has got into cattle in America mostly.
Yeah.
It may be other places, but in America, not so much in Europe. And it's the first time that bird flu has been in cattle, and I forget it's in Texas and a couple of other places.
Right.
And I don't think there's any evidence yet for cattle-to-cattle transmission.
Right.
I don't think there is, anyway. But what they found is that the virus is there in milk products.
Yes.
And so they're obviously slightly worried about that.
Yeah.
What it's not doing is killing the cattle. So it's not like in bird flu, where it gets into the birds and the next day they're all dead.
Yeah.
It's not having that effect. There's lots of asymptomatic cattle it would look like. What it is doing, why they noticed it, is because there was a big drop-off in milk production.
Right. Okay.
So the paper, there's been a paper put up, I think it was May 1st. Yeah, May 1st of this year by loads of different authors. It's a preprint on Biorix called Emergence and Interstate Spread of Highly Pathogenic Avian Influenza A bracket H5N1 close brackets in dairy cattle.
Yeah.
And they are worried about it because it hasn't been in cattle before.
Yeah.
Cattle are a mammal, obviously,
Yeah.
which means that in any mammal it gets into, it can start to pick up mutations which make it better adapted to mammals.
Yes. That's the fear, that it's not killing the cattle. So for the layperson, myself, if it's passing through the bed dies and the virus stays there. If it's passing into cattle, is there not a danger that, and it's not
killing them? And
it's
so
not
far,
killing them?
there have been in the last year or so some deaths, human deaths from bird flu, which is worrying people.
Yeah.
But there's another. I mean, if you don't want to read the actual article itself, which is it's a good article.
Yeah.
It's a science article. The Bulletin of the Atopic Scientists, they put out a good article in April 26. So in other words, before the paper came out. But the paper was picking up on things which people who were interested in bird flu had been tracking anyway.
Yes,
So we knew.
Yeah.
And there's a really good article in there, April. It's called Bird Flu in Cattle, A Step Closer to Humans or a Random Event. It's not a random event, I don't think. I mean, it's random in the sense of it happened.
Yes.
Someone planned it. But what they mean is it doesn't look like it's one of these things that pops up once and goes away. Like bird flu got into tigers
Yeah.
in China, but it sort of went away again.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's got into different kinds of birds or in seals, it's there to stay
Yeah.
and being passed on. It looks like it might be that way in cattle.
It's not an anomaly.
Anomaly.
It's not one of them.
No, not one of them.
Well, ping me both those reports, and I'll put them in the description.
Okay.
In the podcast.
Yeah. And it is that, here's a quote in the bulletin paper. Researchers at Iowa State University, they're saying, look, which is this article saying, the presence of features suggesting the virus in cattle had increased affinity for receptors on human cells and increased mammalian virulence. So they know it has picked up some new things which help it with infecting mammals. It hasn't yet picked up too many of the ones which would mean it would be much more dangerous in humans.
Yeah, right, okay.
But here you go, it's a little bit later. I'll just read it to you. On the other hand, not good when you read that in a scientific paper, but let's go. On the other hand, it could be a disaster. As a technical report of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has demonstrated, the viral sample from the recently infected human did show such a trait, what's called the E627K mutation, despite its absence in the sampled cattle. So they didn't find this mutation when they looked at the genome of the virus in the cattle, but they did find it in a human who had been working with cattle. Despite its absence from the sampled cattle from the same farm as the human, next sentence, the presence of the trait indicated that H5N1 adapted during human infection, although it still failed to induce a respiratory infection.
Yeah.
So it hasn't got the mutations which would mean it's now going to be a pandemic spread by virus.
Is this the same? It was in the New England Journal of Medicine that sort of said that he had infected. He had an eye infection, conjunctivitis.
I don't know. Oh yes, that's right. Yeah.
But he had no fever and no trouble breathing. His lungs were also clear. Yeah. But it is that.
I mean, no one wants to be the kind of, oh my God, the world is ending. We've got enough of that.
Don't panic, don't we?
Yeah. But
there's worrying signs.
Oh, very, very. I mean, what was it? 22. It got into the mink in Spain. Yeah. And mink. That was a worry. That was a mink farm, and it did have mink-to-mink transmission. Yeah. And you'd say, and that means it's they don't think they've got that yet in cattle, which means but in mink it was spreading, probably aerosol.
Well, they were saying it's 36 herds in 9 different states.
Yes, but they're well aware if it's got that far, it's probably everywhere. Yeah, and there's an article, I can't remember where it is in the UK, where they were just saying some American cattle were about to be shipped to the UK. And they've actually sent the sample from the cow or the cattle, I don't know whether it was a beef or whatever, to, I think it's the Herbright in Herefordshire. I can't remember, I may have that wrong. But it's one of our bio labs, top biosecurity labs, and they're looking at it now because obviously that would import it to the UK.
To the UK.
So they are worried, and it's not just cattle. There was also, I'm pretty sure there was a case of what had got into a baby goat. Right. So in other words, we know it's started to spread through all the different birds, skuas and penguins and God knows what else. We know it's got into seals and has been really
that was around the
them.
Falklands, was it? Around?
Yeah, and elsewhere. Yeah. So we know that it's spreading, and the fact that we have so many cows. And they live cheek by jowl. Yes. Means that then becomes an enormous playground for the virus to start evolving and switching, and you get So it is a problem. And the other one they're worried about is in domestic cats, because we know it's in cats. Right. Because, there's a lot of cats, and more importantly...
They eat birds.
But they live very closely with us.
Yes.
See, if there are farm workers who work closely with cows, so they're at most at risk. Yeah. it is a worry. People are definitely worried that it's the more mammals it gets into and the more of them there are,
Yeah.
the more chance there is of it starting to pick up the mutations that
Yeah.
it needs. So it's very
I was just going to sort of say, if anyone's listening that wants to know a little bit more in depth, we did an early.
Oh
podcast
yeah, no,
on,
that's good. Yeah,
bird flu. I think it was probably a second podcast.
yeah. I mean,
that we did.
if bird flu is new to you, the risk of sounding like we're tooting our own trumpet, go back and listen to it because it really is a good bird flu 101.
Yeah.
Because that podcast was on the basis of a massive amount of research that I did
Yeah.
when I was trying to get Channel 4 interested in doing a bird flu,
Yeah.
which they said no to. And I mean, I talked to not every single one, but most of
Yeah.
the top experts, like the top Chinese expert in Hong Kong, the top one in America. And so it's a really good start place.
The thing I stood out from that one was the feed routes.
Yeah, well, I think, I'm glad you put that up. Yes. There is a whole other story which we only touched on in that. We could go back and do it, but it's very tendentious and you do risk getting yourself sued back to the Stone Age, which is why we're slightly cowardly about it. But I do have a very, very good source for it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, someone in intelligence. And because in this preprint, they're saying, where did it get into cattle? And they're saying, well, it looks like it came from a wild bird.
Yeah.
And that could well be because now we have made it such that this virus is endemic in wild birds.
Yeah.
But the other equally, and my source in the side of the story we haven't gone into too much, has made the point, and it's a solid scientific point, that it's it could have come into the cattle through feed because the laws in Europe and America are different.
Yeah.
And in America, guess what is legal to give to cows as part of animal feed? Take a wild guess.
Okay. Chicken nuggets.
Yeah. The stuff, it's called chicken feed, basically. All the stuff that they scrape out the bottom of the big chicken
The
pens.
poo, blood.
Poo, blood, feathers, dead chickens all gets mulched up.
Oh, lovely.
And they do feed, that's part of animal feed. And we know that this is not rumour, this is published peer-reviewed scientific fact that the bird flu virus can survive even after the heating process, the feed can last in there for up to 28 days. So you've scraped it all out, you've done the heating to kill, to make it sanitary, in inverted commas. And they know that in the bag there will be live bird flu virus, which will be viable for up to 28 days. And modern supply chains, it's not going to hang around for 28 days. So it's very possible that it got in there. Because if it's in that many herds and in different states, how did it?
Yeah. How
did it? What this bird went on a tour?
Or cows have grown wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could say, well, it infected one, and then it went from there. But how did it get from the one farm to these other farms? What did they take?
Over 9 states. Yeah. It's a big area.
So I think that we know for sure because it was worked out in Poland that it was the feed, and the source who I've talked to, and it's in the public domain. It's been published.
Yeah,
you can see a trail of.
What you're saying to me is I'm not going to get sued because it's
no. This bit I won't get sued, but there are a couple of companies, particularly one big Thailand company, which is very litigious, and I'm not going to mention its name.
Thank you.
there were you can plot the outbreak in different countries, and it corresponds exactly to when this company opened up its subsidiary businesses in these countries.
Yeah,
no bird flu, company moves in, starts selling bird flu. Guess what? Bird flu. Yeah. No bird flu in the next country, same thing happens. So I think the feed route is very, very possible, but nobody wants to say it because you don't want to lose your house.
Well, I've got a big wooden spoon here because that's sort of leading me a little bit to the sort of honesty and reporting of things.
Yeah.
Let's talk about COVID origin again. 'Cause-
Okay. Oh yeah, no, you're right. Let's do an update on the COVID. Well, that one particularly.
Well, it's
what
just the similarities between what you're sort of saying to me about, the truth being.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, this is pulled from March 26th this year. It was reported in the Telegraph because, although my personal politics is not the Telegraph, we live in an upside-down world where the only two outlets
It was
in
the
this
Mail,
country,
the Mail and the
and
Telegraph.
Ian Birrell at the Mail. I don't read the Daily Mail, but Ian Birrell, he has covered himself in glory.
Yeah.
He really is the man. He's stuck to it. And the Telegraph with has really done. And they were writing a report, and it starts out like this. This is what it says in the Telegraph.
This was March.
March 26th.
Yeah.
Daily Telegraph. Beginning of their article, a former New York Times journalist, so they're reporting on something that has already happened in the States, has attacked a group of leading scientists for, quotes, clearly misleading him over the COVID lab theory in the early days of the pandemic. The New York Times journalist is called Donald McNeil Jr.
Right.
And he said he became skeptical of the engineered leak from a lab hypothesis after several top epidemiological virologists insisted it wasn't possible. And he said he now looks at their efforts as, quote, throwing him off track, and it influenced the newspaper's coverage of the story.
Yeah.
And again, it says unlikely contributed to the topic being, quote, dropped. And he, of course, now has written the book, Oh, Mea Culpa, I've Seen the Light. I don't know Mr. McNeil Jr., but okay. So he's wearing a black hat and then makes a fortune from taking his black hat off and putting a white hat on and saying, oh, yeah, I was misled. Well, you probably were misled, but wake the hell up.
Yeah.
How come other people weren't misled?
But I mean, just very quickly there, because there was something that you'd said to me before, talking about the sort of top scientific journalists, the scientists, Nature, Vanity Fair.
Yeah.
Vanity Fair.
Yeah, Vanity Fair. I don't know. They got some. There was some good journalists in Vanity Fair.
But it doesn't strike me as a top science.
No, but maybe it was just.
publication.
I agree, but maybe it was just there was a couple of people at Vanity Fair who were sat on my side of the fence before it started. I don't know,
Right,
but there was 2 or 3 stonkingly good articles.
Yeah.
So you can't argue with it, but. Yeah, I mean, old McNeil says, very credible, but like any reporter can be misled. And it was the same Proximal Origins little group of people. So, Anderson and Farah, who then went on to publish the Proximal Origins.
Yeah.
And they also... Remember the people who for me, they're down there with estate agents, fact checkers.
Yeah.
Can I just make it clear? Fact checking means phone a friend.
No, look on Wikipedia.
And so they phoned up the top virologists, thinking, I'm going to get to the truth. And the top virologists said what they said in the Proximal Origin. It can't be. No. So that's not fact checking.
Right.
Oh,
I'd read something on. I mean, we always try and guide our audience over to your Substack page, and there was something on Substack. It's turning into sort of I've got all these news apps. I just seem to be getting a lot more interesting things from Substack.
Yeah, Substack's doing really well.
It's doing really well. But there was one article that was around this. It was called the Disinformation Chronicle by Paul Thacker. You come across him?
I've heard his name, but I don't know him.
No, he did a really sort of interesting write-up. It was basically talking about scientific journalists. They get a press release and then they write that up. And it was a story about Kaiser and Cohen.
Oh God, yeah.
And the criticism of Nichols and Ebright. Have you come across?
Yes. Well, Ebright, I know.
Yeah.
Nichols, I think I spoke to him once. And Ebright was in the film, and he has been a leading light, and he's gotten really angry
Yeah.
and said these people are misleading, and people like Cohen at Science. And Cohen has a long track record going all the way back to AIDS.
Yeah. Yes.
And we haven't got time to go into it, but just as you can sort of look at royal families who's related to, and you go, oh God, so he's actually one of the Habsburgs. Oh, well, that explains it. It's like that. In this world, you find that someone was someone else's grad student, and then they and so there is a coterie of people who have an enormous investment in it's a natural origin.
And this has led to sort
And
of
Cohen has been one of their main outlets and is a real champion. I've never met Cohen. He might be a lovely man, but I think he's done very, very badly.
well, a lot of this.
But just to answer your question, what happened is Ebright has been getting more and more outspoken, and then I think they actually put in a proper complaint saying Ebright is saying terrible things and ought to be stopped. You know, he's sort of making threatening. Now, you know, if someone's going to get upset because someone says, I think you're a really bad man and you've done bad things, well, I can understand that. I wouldn't want. But on the one hand, we have people who have been at least dissimulating, if not outright lying, about an event which claimed millions of lives.
Yeah.
But their main concern is that someone's saying nasty things about them. You know, okay, yeah, but maybe you're missing the slight point here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. But there's a whole... It's worth now saying that if we're going to update COVID, several things have come out. Ralph Barrick, he was the man at North Carolina, I think, worked with Xi Jinping, Batwoman. It was his technology. She worked with him in his lab.
Yeah.
It's his transgenic mice that were the vector for doing all the research. She took that technology back with her to Wuhan that was being used there. So Ralph Barrick is the man. He's come out recently and said... It testified, in fact, saying you can't rule out the possible lab escape.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's coming around, and then the U.S. Congress has held loads of hearings, and recently Daszak was called before them, and the Republicans there absolutely skewered him.
Yeah,
and it's sad that it still breaks down on Republican Democrat lines. That's just pathetic.
Yeah,
but it's come out in some of those that there have been unredacted versions of previously released but heavily redacted things, which the US Right to Know, who've been a fantastic organisation.
Yeah.
Them and Drastic have been the...
I was going to ask you about Drastic.
Well, they work really closely together behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And they've been, the US Right to Know has been absolutely brilliant. And so they got hold of these. And basically the story which has now come out, and the unredacted versions I think have been seen by members of the committee, have said, it's so clear that the US intelligence had the information saying, we really think this came from a lab. And more recently, this month, May, just a few days ago, again, the Telegraph, it's published elsewhere. It says, their headline, US shared, quoted in inverted commas, gobsmacking COVID lab leak file with UK. And it basically says that Dominic Raab, who was Secretary at the time, was shown this stuff by Pompeo.
Right. This would have been
Trump.
back in 2020?
Yeah. 2025. 2021. And it was information that was shared with the Five Eyes intelligence. Five Eyes is what? America, UK, New Zealand, Australia. I'm leaving someone important out. Sorry, can't remember you. And it said that Dominic Raab would have seen it.
Wow.
So we knew as well.
Yeah.
So that's been coming out, and then I can't resist it. There's another one.
Go.
Well, it was sent through by Gilles.
Oh, was it? Brilliant. Go on then.
And it just comes through with an email saying, something to ponder, exclamation mark, question mark. And basically what he dug up is he dug up an article from, I forget which one it is. It's from June 26th, 1996.
Wow, 27 years ago.
It is dailypost.com. the paper for Wales.
Oh,
right.
yeah, Post and Echo. Yeah, all right.
Drunken student stole statue's head.
Where's this going?
Zoology student Peter Daszak. I do love Gilles. I'd give him a hug if he was here.
Oh, dear me.
Broke off the head of a statue of the Madonna at Our Lady's Primary School, Bangor, and took it home after a drinking session, Carnarvon Crown Court heard yesterday. Daszak kept it in his flat, along with the road signs, shop and office signs, and roadworks flashing beacons. His collection was found after police had followed a trail of blood from a broken window in a building at the University College of North Wales. But that was only the first visit to Daszak's flat by the police. On a second visit, they went to a shed, and there they found a television set, hi-fi, and other items, all of which had been stolen.
Wow, he's a nice man, isn't he?
So, as Gilles said,
Thanks, Gilles.
something to ponder.
Yeah.
so scurrilous, but also quite interesting.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot of update, and the tide has flowed against. Oh yes, we know for sure it was natural origin.
Yeah.
A, they don't know for sure. B, they never were sure. C, they claimed they were sure when they weren't. So is that a lie? Well, for any defamation lawyers listening, I'm not saying it was, but it sounds quite like it.
Yeah.
And then Farah, one of the chief architects of all of this unpleasantness, gets the promotion now chief scientist at the WHO. So if the WHO are handed lots more power, it will be Farah who wields. Yeah,
Can they call him a toss?
yeah.
I just did.
We don't know whether he does, but I think the chances are he has.
All right, mate. Oh,
Anyway,
this is running and running. Yes. I mean, I do want to do something a bit more on the WHO. Just in everything with Susie, the Chernobyl, and obviously all of COVID, and yeah.
Well, Susie suggested a podcast to us,
right,
which I'll tell you about when the mics are off, because I think it would be a good one, and so it'd be great. And it's more
you're teasing our audience.
I am, but it's more mainstream scientists sticking the boot in to another scientist who's saying something that they don't want said, possibly because of their connections with powerful and rich people who don't want that kind of thing said.
This is
good.
It's not a good place to be in.
There's so much of it in science because science rubs shoulders with power and money.
Politics. On that note, mate, thank you very much for that one.
See you again.
Until the next time. Thank you, peeps.